Welcome back. It's been a really interesting week. I've gotten two exciting goodies. One is my sponsored yarn from BC Garn, which I'll be posting an unboxing video of that later. And secondly, I have the key to help me use my design software. I also spoke with Cochanel Design Studio about my project, and they've been kind enough to lend me their software, and so I'm going to open it now and just see what's inside. Obviously, I'm going to be using a program, but this is going to help me use the software program. There you go. Here's the software program. And I also got an email from Susan. So this is her software, and they've been very kind. If I have any questions, they've told me to reach out to them. And so I'll be doing that and sharing what I'm learning about that software with you all. Let's get into the highlights. So this week, I had planned to use my grid paper and drape it over my dress form, but apparently grid paper on a roll is not so easy to get a hold of, so I had to get that ordered in, and it didn't come until the end of the week. So next week I'll be trying to drape the grid paper over the dress form and calculate my patterns from that, which is perfect. The yarn came, and that way I'll be able to use, for instance, I'm going to make underwear. So I can do a test swatch of the underwear, get the gauge, and use that to calculate the pattern. Perfect. Another thing that I worked on this week was knitting. Actually knitting. I taught myself how to knit when I was an adult. I crocheted, I sewed before then. And then back in 2013, I had a really bad nerve injury, and what it was someone did a botched arterial blood gas stick, and instead of getting the artery, they got my nerve. And while I didn't lose complete function of my hand, I wasn't able to knit or crochet, and without having a tingling sensation, and my hand would hurt badly. So I gave up on knitting and sewing. No, not sewing. I gave up on knitting and crocheting because the way I had to do the repetitive motions really hurt my hands for about 7 years. And then I went to an acupuncturist because I thought, this is enough. I'm tired of not being able to do the things I want to do. And they recommended Moxa, and that completely changed my life, because I've been able to knit since then, and I haven't fully healed, but I have been able to do a lot of activities that previously I was not able to do. I have improved dexterity in my hands. So I'm still working on that. So this week I practiced knitting, and I realized, you know what? I'm kind of slow. Which I knew that before, especially compared to crocheting. It does take longer, but also because I was self-taught, I'm not sure that I learned the most. In fact, I know I didn't learn the most efficient way. I learned the English way, which I know some people will say, don't bash the English. This is not the only way to do English style knitting, which is absolutely correct. I tried continental, and while it does remind me of crocheting, since I have been doing English for so long, at this point in my life, I don't want to switch. So what I've learned instead how to do is a process called flicking, and it's still holding my needles English style, but I'm going to switch angles, and I'm going to show you how I knit before versus how I knit now. All right, so when I initially learned how to knit, I would insert my right needle into the loop, to the stitch, and I would move my entire hand and you can see obviously I'm able to complete the stitches, but this time that I'm taking my hand off of the needle is time that I could be spent moving stitches or working stitches more efficiently. And when I realized, hey, I'm going a little slow, I started researching different styles, and I learned about continental, I learned about lever knitting, and the one that resonated most with me was flicking. And I have not mastered it, I've just learned, and I'm still trying to perfect the tension because my hand has not healed completely, and so I don't have probably the same dexterity as those knitters, and my dexterity will improve as my hand gets better, but I'll show you just in a general sense so you can get an idea of what it is. And I'm still trying to figure out a way that works for me. But basically, the idea is to wrap the yarn in such a way that you keep your fingers always on this right needle. And you insert the right needle, flick it over. Whoop, see what I mean? I'm still trying to figure it out myself, and how to keep the tension right, and how to keep my fingers on there. But the idea is that you don't take your fingers off of, you can see how I'm struggling here because I'm still learning. But the idea is to keep your right hand on the right needle as much as possible and not spend as much time wrapping. And this will just take practice for me to get it. And I just started doing this yesterday for a few minutes, so. But I'll show you again. I'll go down the stitch, and I'm just knitting just to kind of get used to knitting this way, and then I'll practice purling. And again, see, I took my hand off. That wasn't good. I want to leave my finger, my right hand, on this hook and wrap, insert the needle into the stitch, wrap, insert the needle into the stitch, wrap. And what I saw one woman doing is she actually, when she inserts the right hook, she curves it down like that. And I'll include a link to her video because she's been doing it for years and it's better than mine, but I feel like I'm able to work down the needle. I'm thinking of a crochet hook. I'm able to work down the needle faster. It's not terribly faster because I'm still trying to figure this out. Still trying to quite figure out my hand position, my tension. But I feel like I move down the needle faster than when I take my hand completely off. the needle. And I'm still figuring out how to get tension, correct tension. But this is just some old, I think it's maybe like bamboo yarn that I have. Had it for years and I didn't know what to make with it, and I just didn't want to get rid of it, so I've saved it, and it's good for practicing. I think maybe eventually I'll make like a like a raglan sweater. That would be cute. And that's what I learned how to do this week. I learned how to flick, and I learned how to knit a little bit faster. As you can see here, it's really tight. These are looser. These are tight, so I'm still going to be working on my tension, but I'm just going to keep practicing that technique. And once I get a little bit better, then I'll start working on my swatches. So again, this week, I got 2 goodies. I got my design software, Cochineal Design Studio, and I got my yarn from BC Yarn, both sponsored for this exciting project that I'm going to be doing. And I also learned a new knitting technique, which is flicking. And the woman's video that taught me how to do this, I'll post a link to that as well. I also learned a few other things about how to bind off, but those are just kind of small incidental things that maybe you don't care about. And then I did not get to practice with the grid paper, but I will try draping the grid paper next week on my dress form. And eventually what I'd like to do is compare the fit of me draping to a pattern that I design in Cochineal Design Studio and see how the fit compares. And I'll eventually post a video about that, but I think that would be nice to compare the two and see how they both come out with the fit. That's all for this week. Thanks for watching, and I'll keep you posted on what comes next.